without problem. So what if the other is unfriendly? What if the other is dangerous? What if I instinctively do not feel safe in his presence or in his company? What if the other worships false or strange gods? What if he always comes late to meetings? Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., in his autobiography, when he was giving us a glimpse into his years as a university student, talked about how he would polish his shoes to perfection because he was worried about living up to the picture of the unkempt man of color. Those are difficult issues. What if the stranger, truth be told, is simply somebody who is obnoxious? What if the stranger is not that dignified, well-dressed lady that is my neighbor in the business class seat, and we perfunctorily exchange smiles over our newspapers? What if rather it is that man-spreading man in economy class whose immortal remains are spilling over our shared armrest, and I do not know what to do because I'm trying to be comfortable? The perspective I'm trying to introduce is that ultimately the stranger is about the notion and the moment when there is competition for a resource. It is not when we're in a good space. It is not the happy, clappy moment when I see somebody who may not be my color, but who happens to study what I studied in O levels 30 countries away, who therefore I may take to the pub, and over a beer, we can kumbaya and reminisce about Shakespeare and think together about the casting that Jude was talking about. And indeed, rehearse together that she should have died hereafter, that there could have been time for such a event. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. No. The stranger is that moment when we are competing over the same job, and that job is given to the other when I'm desperately in need of that job to pay for my mom's welfare. So, if we accept that the stranger is constructed in a complex space of competition for resources, whatever those resources might be. It might be water, it might be a job, it might be the NHS, it might even be the quest for virtue, it might even be the quest for the limelight or for attention. Isn't the real challenge to think about how you deal with the stranger in a context like that? Because the stranger seems to be the person that, when I'm desperately fighting for resources, like one fighting for oxygen, I raise my eyes and see this other person who is competing for the same resource. And as part of my fighting instinct, I construct what is other about them, what doesn't belong about them. In the context in which I have done work over the years, first starting as a human rights lawyer in Zimbabwe, and today with the privilege to be the Senior Director for International Law and Policy for Amnesty International. One solution that I have pursued vigorously and I found useful is to think about what the human rights framework can offer us. That rather than constructing the stranger artificially, as human beings will tend to do, let us start from a canon that we all share of human rights that belong to that person inherently. This enables us to know that they have to occupy as much space as we must. It enables us to know the obligations that we have, the obligations that states have. It enables us to realize what to do with the migrant. It enables us to realize what to do with the refugee, because we have refugee law. It enables us to know what to do with a person with a disability, because we have laws that protect people with disabilities. But beyond that, one thing that we are also discovering increasingly in my work is that it is not enough to quote the law to each other. It is not enough to throw the law in the face of state actors, in the face of bureaucrats. It is also important to think about what is it structurally that causing the fundamental problems that we are facing today in our world, which Lord Williams, Jude Cameron have alluded to at the beginning. Why is it that we are seeing this trend whereby voters are voting these extremists into power? Why is it that we are seeing this trend whereby people feel that their voices can be represented by those that are preaching hate? And beyond the human rights canon, the second thing I would offer is, I think, to train our minds, and this is why I'm immensely grateful for this initiative, Lord Williams, that you have started. We cannot underestimate the importance of training our minds to be able to think about the other in a complex way that goes beyond the happy clapping moment, but to think about what it actually means to be the other that we have constructed in a moment of competition for a resource. To actually deconstruct otherness and to start from what in my faith was inspired by that radical thinking that says, your father and your mother are looking for you outside. And Christ stands and says, who is my father and who is my mother? And deconstructs the notion of what identity means. But to understand also what it means to think of the next person as a human being that deserves human rights, that deserves human dignity, and that I should be able to meet halfway in spite of what would be my inclination. In short, Jude, the other is a notion that we construct in our quest for resources. There is nothing called the other. There is nothing called the stranger. And through the human rights canon and through training our minds to be able to see fairly into the eyes of the next human being, we are able to change the world.